Well, I'm Dr. Jody Owens, and I've been teaching here full-time at Johnson for 16 years, and as an adjunct part-time before that, and teach primarily in Bible and theology, but also some congregational ministry courses from time to time.
Good deal. And I'm Mark Ziese, and I'm the Dean of the School of Bible and Theology. I'm a newcomer here, having arrived on the Tennessee campus just this year, but I taught for 3 years at the Florida campus before coming here. We landed in Tel Aviv, Israel, and spent a total of about 2 weeks in the country of Israel and traveled all around. We started in Tel Aviv and went to the north, spent a few days up in Galilee, came down the Jordan River and entered into the desert, came back up into Judea and Jerusalem, and then back out of the airport. So it was a good 2 weeks.
Yeah, a full 2 weeks.
Full 2 weeks, indeed.
Yeah. This program is primarily designed for students in our graduate residency. It's kind of a capstone experience for them in some ways. So the primary participants were students from Indianapolis and Orlando, where we have a cluster of graduate residents. There were some other folks that participated as well, some undergraduates and a handful of spouses and one other staff person. But it's primarily for our residents to give them an experience on the ground and to give them a Bible class as well in that program. Yeah, I think we had 15 students and 4 spouses, which was kind of a unique dynamic to have couples there, and something I really enjoyed seeing them experience the trip together. Most of those were graduate students. I think we had 3 undergrad students.
3 undergrads, and the rest were graduate students. And then in addition to Dr. Owens, Jody here, we had Richard Clark from the advancement folks on the campus here at Johnson. And Richard was a great help to us as well along the way.
This is my second time on this trip. So I've been to Jordan before, but first time to Israel last year, and this is my second trip.
But you were in Jordan on dig, right, before? So
yeah.
Was it just one season?
Yeah, one season
over
there.
Yeah. And now two experiences on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
My experience is kind of the same. I spent many seasons working in the country of Jordan, and that was, that's the backbone of my experience. And in the last 10 years, we've been doing these tours. But we started going over there to the Middle East in 1984, and I've been there pretty much every year since. Well, there are a lot of good reasons to go to this part of the world, and among them you can think about modern politics, you can think about sociological issues. Those are important as well. But I think for us as teachers of Bible, and for our students as students of the Word, it's a special place. And well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's special because this is the place where so much of the biblical story took place, right there on the ground. And while we're hard-pressed at times to say, well, this is the spot, I like to say you could hit it with a rock.
Yeah, and I think for the students, there are some aha kinds of moments when you're at the synagogue at Magdala and you think, it's very possible
Jesus
was here.
He sat here.
He sat here.
Yeah.
And you kind of see the students kind of, that's one of the early experiences where they can place Jesus in a physical place and know you're in pretty close proximity to ground that Jesus walked on. And that sort of thing is profound for the students.
Yeah, we talk about these places so often in our classes, and I think for many people it's an experience that puts that anchors those stories to the ground. We don't really have a very good sense of scale, I think, when we read the text, and when you actually see the size of the Sea of Galilee, or you walk across, the wilderness of Judea, and you get a more realistic sense of scale, and even of the environment, the kinds of hills, the kinds of valleys, the kind of weather that biblical people experienced living in this part of the world.
I think one of the other great dynamics that students experience as well is not just the connection with the biblical lands, but realizing too that there's a living faith that continues.
I knew you were going to go there.
Yeah, that long history of the church.
Yeah.
And to see that it's still alive. And so this isn't just a tour of historical places. There's a living faith. And the students are, I think, able to connect in a unique way with 2,000 years of Christian history and realize they're a part of something much, much bigger than just their experience on a Sunday worship.
We like to talk about the living stones.
Yeah.
And there's living stones as well as the dead ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And it's an experience of church cultures that they're not familiar with, particularly the Catholic and Orthodox traditions.
Yeah, a lot of exposure to that. And you know what? Another reason, which we could probably talk about, is actually the dynamic of just being together. The cohorts, the students, not just experiencing the land, but experiencing maybe each other and worship in the land together.
Yeah, I think that's a really important dynamic. And one place we saw that was at the Bedouin tent experience. We actually spent a night in a Bedouin tent. It was actually more like a Bedouin log cabin, but we'll call it a Bedouin tent. And we experienced a program on Bedouin hospitality. And the unique dynamic that took place there really was the students got to be together in a different way. We slept in one big open room, so it was very communal, and the meals were all family style.
Yeah.
And so it put the students together in a different way, and I think they really all appreciated that. And one of the things we did there that night was to practice silence as worship that evening there in the desert. And that was kind of a bonding experience, I think, for some of the students.
Made memories.
Yeah.
Remember it.
Yeah.
As far as favorite moments go, one of the big ones, I think, is one of the moments we calculate this right up front. And students almost literally get off the bus and we travel to the first site, which is Caesarea by the Sea. And, it's this wonderful Greco-Roman site that has columns and has theater and amphitheaters and, of course, just boatloads of biblical history there.
Literally.
Yeah. All sorts of connections. And as somebody who's gone to the land many times, one of the things that gives me joy is watching the response of people. I've sort of worn out the stones, I guess, with my own eyes. And so I now vicariously appreciate the land through the eyes of people who are seeing it for the very first time. And Caesarea is one of those sort of eye-popping moments, and students have read about it, they've talked about it, maybe preached about it, and then to actually stand where, Paul stood, in the harbor, out into the sea. That's an eye-popping moment.
Yeah. I think for me, it's maybe some of the small moments where a light bulb comes on for a student and they just see things from a different perspective because they're there in the land. And they realize how close it is, the sense of space and all of Jesus's ministry, for example, taking place in a relatively small area up around Galilee. Yeah. And the light bulb begins to come on. It's just fun to see students work through that.
What's one of the light bulb places that you noticed? Or?
Yeah, I think Capernaum would be one of those places where they realize how small a community we're talking about, and how close it is to other areas that are mentioned along the Sea of Galilee there. I think that's a light bulb moment. Yeah,
it's a good one too. Yeah.
I mean, it's a nice trip.
Yeah, we ate well. We have like a breakfast buffet every morning and a buffet every night. I mean, There are many things over there that will kill you, like rabid dogs, rabid dogs. But starvation is not one of them.
Not one of them. And I guess we didn't mention, but one of the things we do is incorporate some times of worship.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're able to do that in some of the historically significant churches.
Unique places.
And unique places. And that's a neat dynamic.
We had communion. Where did we do communion this year?
Our plan was to have communion at
goodness. At Dan.
Or
Caesarea Philippi.
Caesarea Philippi, but the schedule was thrown off.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. We did it afterwards in the hotel.
Yeah.
Well, this was a unique trip in so many ways, and one of the most unique things that has ever happened to me in my entire life happened on this trip.
Mm-hmm.
A dog came running down the trail, and he bit me. I tried to stop the dog from biting other people, but he lashed onto me, and I grabbed him by the throat, and we went down on the ground, and well, it was a bit of a scuffle. At the end of it, the dog turned out to have rabies. Mm-hmm. So no, I'm still careful when I brush my teeth. So anyway, I missed a couple of days of the trip because I had to go get the rabies vaccine, rabies shots. And I left Jody all by himself. Jody, you're in charge, dude. I'm on the way to the hospital.
Yeah. And we were going to places I hadn't been before, Masada and out at the Bedouin tent, but it worked well.
We survived.
And I think that threw everybody for a loop. But in some ways, that brought the group together. I mean, we spent some time praying for you, and folks were concerned. It will certainly be memorable for the students.
Yeah, they were probably. It's not memorable. It was traumatizing. Before it was over, they shot the dog.
Yeah.
The guy with the gun, and he's writhing on the ground.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
It made the local news from what I heard, although I searched it on Google and couldn't find it.
Didn't find it.
So I don't know.
The health department released a statement about the issue, so it did make it was at a certain level reported. I'm not sure how widely.
Right.
I made some new friends though. The park rangers there were very helpful.
Yeah. And this interrupted our visit to one of my favorite sites, at least.
Yeah.
We were still able to kind of work our way through. But
Tell Dan is one of my favorite sites in the entire country, and this happened like right at the beginning of our visit there. And I don't know, Jody. I don't think I'm going to be able to say it's my favorite site anymore. I'm never going to be able to walk down that trail.
Yeah, we should have made a monument of 12 stones. I don't know why we didn't think to create a standing stone there, marking the site so that we could tell future generations and they would know the story.
Yeah, you've heard of the golden calf at Dan. Let me tell you about the golden dog. Oh, goodness. The guy who picked up all the shell casings. The shell casings are no longer there. So you'll have to discover it through oral, tradition, which actually is kind of informative. As we talk about other things that happen.
That's right.
That
if
land.
This isn't exactly the site, it's within a stone's throw.
You can hit it with a rock. Oh, goodness sake. Well, as Jody discussed right at the lead, this is something that we do regularly for our residents, the students of Johnson University. And the plan going forward is to do this every year in the springtime.
Yeah, I think as long as we have resident students, this trip will be a part of their experience. And hopefully some availability for undergrads to participate like we've seen the last couple of years.
Right. And it's a great trip, I think, for any of our undergrads as well as our grad students, and one that can find a place in their curricular needs, and certainly in the catalog, and a great way to continue to build their biblical knowledge.
Yeah.